We're live. Okay. This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story, once a week. I'm Anais.
I'm Rami.
I'm Maya.
And I'm Gerald.
And this week we're discussing Marry the Sea by Marie-Helene Bertino, a story featured in the October 2014 issue of Time Out magazine. Attempting to summarize this surreal story is nearly impossible. But what I can say is that a series of evocative paragraphs that are loosely threaded together by set pieces and characters who are often unnamed coalesce into a theme around aimlessness, characters trying to find their compass, be heard. I don't know. We're going to debate that part. But join us for a discussion of yellow and pink parakeets in New York, a hermit who lives in an abandoned Navy ship, a waitress at a dead-end job, a writer at a dead-end novel, a boy learning how to see, a couple learning about each other, and ginger cookie monocles.
Annie, I missed you so much, and I could not have gotten my computer back on a better day. That was the best summary I've ever heard. Okay, we're going to have to start at the very top level because the story is so complex. We're just going to have to chip away at it with teeny tiny little nibbles. How did everybody feel about the story? Just initial emotions.
Okay, here we go.
I've been waiting for this all day.
Have you really? I liked it. Yay!
What?
Rami right now is looking abandoned.
Sorry, Rami.
Okay. I mean, all right. I'm just curious to hear why you and Anais liked it. I hope Maya doesn't join the bandwagon.
I think Maya's frozen for me. Maybe all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep going and then we'll click her in when she connects again. Yeah, I liked it because I had fun reading it. So I think that's the most important part. I feel like my biggest takeaway that I got to the end after I read it a couple times was, yes, it's confusing, but the confusing felt fun, a bit like watching a magic show. So I still had a good time, even though I had no idea what was going on.
I'll tell you, it made me feel rebellious. It's as though the author is trying to make a statement saying, to heck with all of your norms and standards. I'm just going to write whatever I want, even if it does sound like verbal something or another.
Yeah, although I feel like she flounced the rules in a way that to me made it obvious that she knows the rules. And I guess I can get into that a little bit more, but for that, I definitely want Maya to connect again because now we're getting into the meat of the discussion. Oh, is she back?
I think it looks like she's coming back. Yeah, I've read it 3 times, and I agree with you, Anais. It's a fun story, and there's some sort of discussion I want to get into later on, and you have to. Okay, well, one of the other things I want to talk about is, what is a story, and is this a story? It's a hard question. It's a hard question, but I enjoyed reading whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. We keep saying it's fun. But it's funny that we had fun with it when the tone of almost every tiny paragraph, so each paragraph sort of stood alone, right, was contained. No thread flowed into 2 paragraphs continuously, right? So, but every single one of them had like a bit of a somber tone, like it was slightly depressing, right? Like the topics that were being discussed in the story weren't fun themselves, but the way that she drew it was weird. It was, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's, the couple meeting and she wants a sexless relationship, but she doesn't know how to convey that. The waitress who, is feeling a bit lost. The mom who feels that the world has gone all wrong. The woman who's a hermit in the Navy ship. None of these are fun, happy, vivacious characters. And yet we're having fun as we read about them. So I don't know how she pulled that off because the subject matter isn't necessarily fun. Even the parakeets, everyone's just like, oh, these parakeets. Like, it's not a thing that people are like, yay.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. I think the quality of her writing comes through. So you can read the paragraphs and you think, and I've highlighted so many parts where you think, oh, nice, nicely written, nicely written. And I like the way that she starts it off by saying, you know, this didn't really happen, and then later on she talks about the writer in the coffee shop, the drunk writer, who says the best way to start a story is by saying this didn't really happen, and all the way through there's links between the various bits of story or various paragraphs, and you think, ah, that's referring back to that, and so that was quite. It was quite clever, but it's not an over clever story. You don't feel at any time that it's been constructed to be clever. It feels like she's just written this stuff that's come into her head.
You know, it's you were saying that they're the little threads that are connected. As I was reading it the first time, I noticed something, which was the first chunk of paragraphs were like really good opening story paragraphs. Each one of them started like you're starting a new story fresh. And then the middle chunk felt more like middle paragraphs. And then the last ones felt like end. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I counted, and there's 21 paragraphs. And if you it's kind of like some of them, like this could be a beginning or an end. This could be a middle or an end. But it's like almost 7 beginnings, 7 middles, and 7 ends. All right. So then I started connecting it. Like I drew them out, and then I started connecting it. So like some of them overlap. Like the people who meet at the printer, I think overlap with the waitress. They're in the coffee shop. And the dude yelling at the coffee shop, that's a standalone middle for the waitress. So some things start to blend into each other. But, and also the waitress is the one who goes to, no, that's just the guy, that's the photographer. Yeah. So I just started connecting them, and that was interesting because it was almost like she's just experimenting with how do you start a really good story, because these startings are great, and how do you end a really good story. A lot of these endings are great, and some of the endings I thought would make great beginnings. Like my absolute favorite paragraph was really short, and it was let me find it because it was worth it. I'm still waiting for Maya, but it's let me find it because it was so good. Okay. If you place a virus into a petri dish, the water will develop antibodies to combat it. After it is removed, the water retains memory of the virus. Last night, I sat under the stars holding a ratty sweater against my cheek. Who does she hate? I love that one. That was my favorite one. That was good.
No, it was...
What does that mean?
Okay, so real quick, this is why I love it since we have time, I guess. So first, she's giving you that visual of a virus in a petri dish, and like I don't think this is biologically sound, but it doesn't matter that water develops antibodies. I don't know about that, but
sure.
Right. But she's saying it's the way in which a virus is invading the water, and even though the water defends itself, is fighting that. Once the virus is gone, the water still remembers that virus, right? Which this is actually true of bacteria. Like bacteria actually keep a copy of viruses that they've killed, so they can kill them better in the future. But that's a side point. So then she juxtaposes that with someone sitting under the stars holding a ratty sweater against their cheek. So that ratty sweater is a memory. And because she just juxtaposed this with the water retaining a memory of a virus, then you can see it as her holding a sweater, which is a memory of someone who was like a virus in her life, who she had to fight off. And now it's over, but she's still remembering that turmoil. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of great little pieces like that, and I mean, we all know that I love a sort of good, straightforward story with a good plot and all this sort of stuff. But actually, this thing is great. It's I mean, you know, the writer is drunk at a table. Writers today need to learn to build houses. Nabokov built houses for his readers. Each chapter a room. The problem with most novels is that too much happens. A novel should be as eventful as an instruction manual on how to read an instruction manual. I mean, what a brilliant line! There's so much to like about it. And if you like I did, if you sort of park your ideas of what a story should be, and instead you sort of embrace the weird, then it's very entertaining, very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Gerald, real quick, your microphone went lower and changed, and last week your microphone switched out.
Yeah, it's switched to the built-in mic on the computer again, which is annoying.
Okay, if you want to switch it back, I heard the difference.
So how do these different parts come together for you?
They don't in terms of one narrative, but what they are doing that I like is they're giving me excellent opening paragraphs, excellent ending paragraphs, juicy middles, and even though they don't flow together necessarily and they only sometimes bleed into each other, it's almost like it's just each piece in itself is engaging. And I do think part of the theme here is a lot of these characters are sort of aimless, lost about where they're going, try to figure out whether it's in their novel, in their career, in their relationships. So there's that sort of wanderingness that I think makes the wanderingness, it's almost like a little meta, like the author wandering in what story they want to tell. Like the author of this story is also a bit, not necessarily aimless, but like knows the good set pieces, but can't quite string it together. I like that. I like it just, I don't know. It's like each piece is just really engaging. And because there's really excellent beginnings, middles, and ends, that's why I'm like, she knows the rules. She's breaking them on purpose, and I like it. Yeah. You're very low, Gerald. Maybe? I have to like bring you up to 100 to hear you or something.
Okay, tell you what. Is this any better?
Much better. Yeah.
Yeah. What's happening is that the Hangout has got this mic, and Audacity has got the computer mic. So anyway,
okay,
whatever. That's weird. Okay, so I'll carry on. So why doesn't Audacity do that? Anyway, yeah, I think the yeah, Maya's having trouble, isn't it? Yeah, it's so we were talking about, yeah, Rami asked, how did it come together? And it never does come together. And there's no through line of narrative from start to end. There's no, I suppose you could say that the narrator is the common character. So she's first person, she's telling the story of what happens in various incidents. But it's like she's sort of remembering things that happened in a sort of fairly random way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also because of that, it has multiple endings, right? It feels like it has multiple endings. James saying, "I gave you the wrong instructions to Saturn." The people at the bar being like parakeets. Like there was, I mean, like I said, I drew the through line. So let's see. The ship one, she falls asleep. Oh no, she's climbing forever the ladder. That's that ending on the ship through line. Then the mom with the ginger monocles is the ending. So it's just like it ends a bunch, right? So I feel like it has that quality of like, if you see the writer yelling in the coffee shop as the compass of the story, he's telling you one. The big line he says was just, this never happened. This story starts with this never happened, right? So it's just like, forget any idea of trying to make sense of anything. And then also the whole idea of like building a house. If you see the story as sort of like building a house, like you're supposed to set the foundation and then build come up from that. It's like, here's all these pieces of a story and she hasn't quite figured out how it assembles into one. It's kind of like when authors who journal, they'll like write down different things that occur to them, a dialogue in the car, people walking on a beach, and they have all these pieces and then they can't figure out how to get it into one story, or is it many stories, or is it an anthology, or is it a novel? It's like you're getting like those pieces of the journal, but very polished.
Yeah. And I think that's why it works, because each piece is so well polished, so well written. And I was thinking at one point I was thinking, well, it's a bit like modern art. So you look at modern art and it doesn't make sense, and there's no, sometimes it sort of defies conventions. The thing about modern art is that you can see it, in one piece. There is one picture, and you look at it and you look at it as a whole, Whereas with a piece of writing, you have to read it sort of chronologically, one piece after the other. So it's a bit like modern art, where they're uncovering bits of the painting and then closing them up again. So, it's a bit like that. So individually, the part sort of makes sense, but doesn't fit in with the rest. And then when you step back and look at the whole thing, then it's you can appreciate what it is that the author's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, I think you can only get away with this when each piece is individually really good. Because I keep thinking back to when we read Ingenue that we struggled with, and it had a bit of this, where things felt a bit jumbled, a lot of words seemed random, there's a lot of visuals that made no sense, metaphors that made no sense. That's the guy who, was it the raincoat reminded her of like a boiled chicken or chicken skin? Like, that was that weird one. That was, yeah. And we struggled with it. And I think, and that was a poet who was writing prose, and like it got a little, anyway, we all struggled with that one. And I keep thinking, why didn't I accept that sort of wonkiness, craziness in that story, but I do in this one? And I'm trying to put my finger on what the difference is, because we don't always tolerate this on the show. We've been pretty upset in the past, and we're like, what did we just read? But this time we're not.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. Rami, go ahead. Whoa, tell me why you're still upset about the story.
I mean, you've highlighted it. I think it needs to have come together for me. I don't mind, disparate kind of elements and parts, but at the end, there needs to be some kind of cohesion. I do like the analogy that Gerald made with it being a piece of modern art. I'm not the biggest fan of modern art, but at least when you go to the museum, there's a little placard there usually that gives you the artist's name and maybe some context about what this is supposed to be, or what the artist's intention is, or what it's supposed to represent.
Well, she doesn't bring it together in terms of a plot, but she brings it together a bit in a theme. So she quits her job, she leaves, she goes to her mom's house. And the parakeets have sort of been annoying here and there throughout the story. Nobody likes them. And then there's a point where the mother says, well, we knew you weren't a waitress. We're silent. Outside, the parakeets are shushed and listening. So now everyone's supposed to whoop, zoo in, right? Yeah. And then it goes, why is it impossible to hold the feeling of happiness inside me? I think that's a big theme here. A lot of these characters tend to be unhappy. And then through her ginger snap monocle, my mother regards me. They're making ginger snaps smaller, she says. The whole world's gone wrong. So I think that the whole world's gone wrong thing, it's like that, all the different pieces that are coming together, you can see all the people in those pieces agreeing with that statement. So that kind of ties in things thematically. And the idea of we knew you weren't a waitress, that idea of what you're supposed to be, that sort of faded thing, is something that for the narrator, you sort of see threaded throughout a little bit, or the way that you're supposed to, I don't know. I just feel like thematically, the lines are there and they're tied together. It's just narratively where you're like, eh. And I mean, it's even in that last sentence, they're making ginger snaps smaller. There's even some like mania there. Like, just like, please stop paying attention to the things you're seeing and just pay attention to the things you're feeling. Like modern art.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's because with realistic art, or whatever, however it's described, you can see what it is, and you can admire the skill of the artist, and you can say, oh, that's really, the perspective is great, and the proportions are lovely, and the skin tones are fantastic. So these are all the rules for painting a realistic piece of art. So and you think, wow, this is really good, very impressive, and look at the size of it, but this isn't like that. This is the sort of the piece that has no, it's a story with no plot, really. It's all theme. Is that right? Could that be right? Maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Each individual paragraph kind of has like the beginning of a plot and then just supports it. So yeah.
Yeah. Rami's not convinced.
I don't know. I don't know about this, guys.
We're not convincing you, are we?
Well, no, I mean, and you don't have to.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. And I guess there's one plot of the waitress is getting frustrated. She got a tip that was a fact about hummingbirds that may not even be true. And there's just like dudes screaming at the coffee shop, and her boss is reprimanding her for talking to her coworker about work. Okay, like, and then she kind of has like a thing that happens to her, and then she goes home and she quits. So like she has a plot. It's just buried in like random standalone things, like the dragonfly. I don't know.
Yeah, and the woman on the boat with the ladder and sleeping on the dock, and the guy with the camera, and there's so many sort of things that just dropped in, and you think, okay, that's interesting, and it doesn't. I don't. Maybe if we had like 3 or 4 hours, we could finally come to work out what each piece meant in the overall structure of the thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny, but yeah.
I saw the guy as the camera as just another customer in the coffee shop.
Okay.
That was me on the second read through. The first read through, I don't know. It was just floating on its own.
It's kind of because locations change, don't they, so quickly too. So you think, oh, here she is. The woman's asleep on her ship, and so I slept on the concrete. And then the guy with the photographer comes up, and you think, is that? I took it to be on the dock, but obviously,
I thought that the first time. Yeah. Like he's on the dock, and the second time I was like, nah, this is probably back to coffee shop. I'm guessing.
Yeah. So you have to accept that can happen too. That the location changes instantly between the little scenes, and I suppose it's like I suppose it's just like a short film, really, isn't it? It's just these little scenes that sort of play out, and you think, oh, that's just when you get interested in that, what's happening over there. She changes and does something else.
That's like, have you ever seen Holy Motors? It's a real surrealist. It's just crazy. It's a crazy movie. I love it. I can't even. I'd probably have to rewatch it. It has that. Like, now this is happening, and now this is happening, and it jumped over here. And there is a theme that goes through it, but not a plot that goes through it.
Oh, okay. What's it called?
Holy Motors.
Holy Motors, right? It's
bizarre. I recommend it to our listeners too. Really bizarre. Not for children. Not that it's overly graphic or anything, but there's a few things I would not watch for kids. But there's just some crazy stuff. There's a leprechaun that comes out of nowhere for no reason. It's nuts. But it gave me that same feeling of like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm loving it.
Excellent. and I suppose there's not much else to talk about, is there, really? Because it's there's not much more to discuss, because it is what it is, and it is exactly as you see it. So there's this, and you've highlighted some of the themes, of sort of depression or sadness, or things being wrong with the world, and that's about it, really.
This was published in Time Out just in time to help promote her novel. There's a part of me that's like, do I want to read this novel or not? Let me tell you why. Because while I love this and I found this captivating, I think in a novel I need a tiny bit more narrative from putting in that much time. Maybe not. I have read one novel that never made any sense, and I was okay with it. But still, there's a part of me that's like, can I tolerate this for a whole novel, as engaging as it is?
Yeah.
Maybe. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, maybe I'll love it, or maybe I'm gonna be like, no. I need to know. Just like, yeah.
There's a sneaking suspicion that a whole novel full of this would make your head explode, trying to keep bits of it in your head, and you think, oh, that's referring back like 58 pages ago.
Yeah.
She'd totally do that.
Right, because here I have 21 paragraphs, and I'm making little links between them. Can you imagine? It was like hundreds of paragraphs. Oh.
No, that's not going to work, is it?
No. Rami, has your rating gone up at all?
No.
Wow.
There you go. Rami knows.
I mean, I wouldn't forgive myself for recommending this to someone. I don't see how they could forgive me, so I'm not gonna do that.
Wow, that's harsh. I will say this: I wouldn't recommend this to just anyone. I'd recommend this for people that I already know will be receptive to this. So, like when you were talking about modern art, there is a surrealist movement in art, in different types of art, but it's not something that a hugely mainstream audience digests. It has enough of an audience that it is a movement that has been around for decades, now a century, I guess. So there is something about it that a lot of people can identify with. So we can't dismiss that. And also, Gerald and I liked it, so we can't dismiss that either. But also, it's not like it's something that's like popping up everywhere and people are loving and eating up. So there is something about surrealism that I guess it requires a certain kind of taste. And then a lot of people have that taste. It's not that rare. A lot of people like it, but a lot of people also don't. Like, the people that go to modern art museums to hate it, to be like, oh, I could do that. I could do a black circle on a white canvas, Like, yeah, I think there's more of those than the people who are just like, I like the black circle. Well, that's not really surrealism, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be like going to a book club and where the people in the book club and what their tastes are, and just saying, you should totally read this because it's fantastic short story, because most of them would just go, what? Don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I think you have to be a person who would accept this sort of writing first. And I didn't used to be. Maybe I'm changing.
Yeah. Also, so for our listeners who might be wondering what happened to Maya, she lost her connection, and by the time she got it again, she couldn't join back. Maya has had a bad run, but she is still she's watching us live and she's making comments. She said she would totally recommend this story, and that an entire novel of this would enter Lincoln in the Bardo territory.
Yes, it totally would.
So
is that
a bad? I say no. I love Lincoln in the Bardo.
We know.
Listen, not too long ago, I was talking about it in like a group chat, and then I got people to buy it and read it.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I'm an evangelist for it now. So, are we ready to rate?
Sure.
I was going to rate it a Q, just to be weird. Just
You did that for Ingenue, I think. Not Q, but you rated it something bananas.
Yeah, yes, it is bananas. On the rating of how much I enjoyed it, it's got to be 5.5.
Rob? Okay. Rami is dying. Listeners can't see his face. He looks like he's about to faint. He's in just disbelief. Rami.
Oh,
speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick to conventional ratings and give it the lowest score I can possibly give, which is a 0.5.
Whoa.
Oh, that's right. You give a 0.5 because it had words. I forgot. He's explained this before. Why the 0.5? Why not a 0? Well, it had words.
Oh, no, because the Bradbury rating's from 1 to 6. I think I'm even going below, like, what's
it is
allowed.
from 1 to 6. That's true. Yeah. Also, somebody who's very fussy was like, when you guys do half ratings, you technically can't because it's 1 to 6. You don't have a second significant figure. I'm like, okay. I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Someone actually said
Yeah, they were like, it should be a 1.0 to a 6.0. I'm like, cool. All right.
Okay, whatever.
I'm giving it a 5 because it felt like a 5. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I think my game is great, but Rami might hate it. So I found really famous opening sentences to surrealist novels. And we're going to do a Mad Lib. I'm going to read you the sentence, tell you a blank, and then give you 3 words, and you're going to guess which is the word that fills in the blank.
Oh, very good.
That's cool.
That's a very good quiz.
So I have 8 of these. It's whoever at the end of the 8 has scored the most, and if you have the same number of points, I have a tiebreaker.
Okay, we have to do the book.
Ah, yeah, give me your
What
books.
we're doing next week.
Uh-huh.
I'm suggesting James Joyce, A Little Cloud.
Nice. And my story is Wyatt Thirst by Brendan Bowles.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Rami.
Okay.
So, it's a novel called The Crow Road by Ian Banks.
Read that.
It was the day my blank exploded. Is it?
Crow.
No, it's not Crow.
Do the
Is it?
titles usually give us clues or?
No, this is surrealism. You have no clues.
Okay.
You're going to love it. So, it was the day my blank exploded. Is it my beer exploded, my prayer exploded, my grandmother exploded?
Grandmother.
It's grandmother. Okay. Yeah. All right, Gerald.
Let loose.
Yep.
Mine's just asked us to give a shout out to Gail, who's in the YouTube chat.
Hi, Gail. I was just speaking to someone the other day saying I need to reach out to Gail. I saw that Gail has this project. It's about like recording your legacy. All right, I'll talk to her about that later. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, like memories or something. Doesn't matter. All right. Maybe we'll plug it later. Okay, so Gerald, The Ask by Sam Lipsyte, I guess. Okay. America, said Horace, the office temp, was a rundown and demented blank. So America is a rundown and demented clown, a rundown and demented pimp, a rundown and demented cheat.
Clown.
Pimp.
I was gonna go for pimp. Yeah.
Okay. This one's kind of easy, so Rami might be winning this week. This is the only easy one in the quiz. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic blank. Insect, frog, bat.
I'd like to thank my high school English teacher, Mr. Gutman, for.
We were in the same class. Thanks, Mr. Gutman.
It's insect.
Insect. Yeah. I think I told Gutman about this years ago. Yeah. I didn't think ahead. I should have given that one to you. You would have known it too.
Yeah.
All right. Gerald.
Yeah.
The Last Good Kiss by James Crumley. When I finally caught up with Abraham Traherne, he was drinking beer with an alcoholic blank named Fireball Roberts in a shamshackle joint just outside of Sonoma, California, drinking the heart right out of a fine spring afternoon. So he's drinking beer with an alcoholic chimpanzee, alcoholic bulldog, alcoholic horse.
Horse.
Nope, bulldog. An alcoholic bulldog named Fireball Roberts. Rami. Venice Underground by Jeff Vandermeer. Let me tell you why I wish to buy a blank at Quinn's Shanghai Circus. Wish to buy a dinosaur, centaur, meerkat.
Meerkat.
Meerkat. You're really good at guessing surreal stuff.
Yeah, he's our surrealist expert.
Uh-huh. All right. Gerald.
Yep.
Neuromancer by William Gibson. It's not really not surrealism, but this sentence. It's okay. The blank above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel. The helicopter, the sky, the cloud.
Cloud.
Sky. Close.
I'm no good at this.
Okay.
What is good? I'm just whiffing here. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll do two more for fun, but Rami is one. Okay. Rami. I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. I write this blank in the kitchen sink. I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. I write this bleeding in the kitchen sink. I write this laughing in the kitchen sink.
Bleeding.
Nope, sitting.
Oh.
And Gerald. Blown Away by Ronald Sukanik. Psychics can see the color of blank. It's blue. They can see the color of thoughts, stress, time.
Stress.
Nope, time.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah. All right, so what are we reading, Rami?
We're reading Wyatt Thirst by Brendan Bowles.
Okay. But before you go, surf a wave of ones and zeros on the back of a podcast microphone that has been squished flat into a board under the weight of your opinions and ideas. Bring your thoughts with the crabs and sand dollars to the coast of literarroadhouse.com and let your thoughts wash over the public comment section. Make them slick and shine into the light of your brilliance. Wow, that was terrible. Want more writing by authors with talent? Join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, a monthly show that discusses full fiction novels. In June, we'll be reading The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Like the girl in the story, we only say a piece of what we mean. Although we say follow us on Twitter at Lit Roadhouse and on Facebook, what we mean is we crave your friendship and want to get to know you. Also, if you want to discuss a short story in particular, let us know via parakeet tweet. And finally, we want to grow as big as a whale that swallowed the moon. Help us grow by leaving a review on iTunes and supporting us at patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the virus infecting the petri dish of water in your life. Until next time. Read a good story. Woo! You guys love my surreal? It was so good.
Very good. Yeah. It's strange.
All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast, but bye, Gail. I'm totally reaching out about your project thing. I did a little stuff.
And Maya.
Well, Maya's in Slack. All right.
Okay.